Hello, hello, I'm Kats, and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to be doing another edition of Free-to-Play Champion Showcase featuring the winner of the latest poll, which is Lord Entertainer Fabian, a fusion from like 2-ish months ago, but a very, very popular champion at the time, very good champion still to this day. And yeah, let's dive right into what he can do and where I use him on my account. So Lord Entertainer Fabian, the 6th anniversary raid fusion, and probably one of the strongest we've had for the entire year of 2025. He was the lockout champion that everyone has been wanting for years and years and years, or at least the more accessible one, I should say, lockout champion that we've been wanting. And so with that, let's dive into his kit. For those of you who are unfamiliar, but I doubt that is many of you, but nonetheless, on the A3, his bread and butter ability attacks all enemies before attacking, has a 100% chance when booked of decreasing the duration of all enemy buffs by 3 turns, and also has a 100% chance of increasing the cooldowns of all enemy skills by 3 turns. The best thing about this is the before attacking. So the buff reduction aspect is independent of the affinity of the enemy because it is before he attacks. However, the cooldown increasing aspect could be subject to weak hits. Therefore, magic affinity is not necessarily the best place to use him, but nonetheless, odds are in your favor that he will lock them out nonetheless. But that's not all. He also grants himself an extra turn if there are no buffs left on the enemies after this attack, meaning after he decreases their buffs by 3 turns. Now, this can be avoided in a multitude of ways. Ward of the Fallen, Lightning Cage, and other such things that are buffs that cannot be removed in this manner can combat this very, very easily. And of course, protected buffs and anything like that. So obviously he can go kind of on a rampage if you don't have any of those things on your team. But if you do, you're safe somewhat from him snowballing with the extra turn and going right into his A2 ability here, which is an attacks one enemy and will place petrification on them for 1 turn, which if for those who don't know, it will turn you to stone, which means you take a lot less physical damage, but you do take amplified damage from bombs, and it pretty much purges you of all your buffs at the time, and you are immune to turn meter increase and decrease as well. When booked, it then has a 100% chance of placing a true fear on everyone else who you did not petrify. And then the passive effect here is that whenever an enemy under a fear or true fear debuff successfully uses a skill, and that could be even if they're trying to use their A1, that still counts as them attempting to use a skill, he will counterattack with this ability and hit them, petrify them, and potentially place true fear again on everyone else on your team. So you can most certainly get stuck in a loop of perpetual petrification and perpetual fears. And then lastly, on the A1 here, attacks one enemy 2 times. It will steal, each hit will steal 10% of the target's turn meter. So he will increase his turn meter by the amount stolen, so 20% turn meter fill, unless he weak hits, of course. And it will also place a true fear debuff on the enemy for 2 turns if the turn meter is fully depleted. So if he happens to counterattack after you attack him for some reason, he might fully deplete your turn meter because you just took your turn, unless he can place a true fear on you. And then he has a pretty cool resilient passive that I think a lot of people sometimes forget about, but he is not immune to CC, but he will remove all CC except for sheep at the start or before the start of his turn. So if you try to sleep him and buy yourself a turn, it's not going to work. Provoke, fear, true fear, stun, freeze, none of that stuff will work. He will remove it at the start of his turn. So if you want to lock him down, you'll basically have to lock him out or reduce his turn meter or something like that. But if he ever gets a turn when he's under CC, he will purge it from himself. So just keep that in mind, be forewarned. And then whenever an enemy is revived, it places true fear on the enemy for 2 turns. And yeah, so that he has a lot of true fear in his kit. The lockout is great. And then he can also remove, decrease the duration of buffs, which is polymorph proof, which is really, really good. Obviously, everything else he does, all the true fears across all the other abilities and the passive can definitely get you polymorphed. So be forewarned about that as well, depending on how, or just think about that when you're considering how you want to build him. And speaking of the build, you probably can see it here a little bit, but I do have my Lord Entertainer Fabian in 4-piece supersonic, which is great. It helps him try to cut in on certain enemies who do a lot of buffs with not a lot of turn meter or 0 turn meter. And then I also have him in 4-piece pinpoint. And so the goal of that is to protect him at least once from getting sheeped from one of the many true fears that, like I mentioned, that he has in his kit. And then to kind of fill the gap there, because those are 8 pieces in total, I have 1 piece of feral for the extra boost in accuracy. Now, what I definitely see most often amongst enemy Fabians is definitely a combination of stone skin and supersonic, just for the survivability. So that is definitely the more popular way to go, but I prefer to not use stone skin on my account for my own personal reasons, and so I've opted for the pinpoint and the supersonic build. So really quickly, let's go through the gear pieces that sum up his build. We have accuracy on the banner, which is a lovely pinpoint banner, double speed with some HP, some defense, so perfect for a support champion that he is. We have a HP amulet with a triple accuracy roll. It's 5-star, but nonetheless, you know, it's pinpoint. That's all that really matters. So lots of accuracy there. And then we have an HP ring with some defense, some HP. Not the best ring, 5-star once again, but it is pinpoint, and that is the most important aspect. Then we start going into the actual gear or artifacts. We have speed on the boots with some triple accuracy roll, one of my best supersonic boots. I'm working on re-rolling that into speed. On the chest, I have accuracy on the chest because primarily his job is to lock people out, reduce their buffs, and he's squishy no matter what you're going to do, especially in like endgame arena. You're never going to build him to be a super tank just because you want to have a high speed, high accuracy. And so accuracy is where I opted for on the chest. So as fast as I can possibly get it. So accuracy chest is the way to go, fast and accurate, so I can get it. And then on the gloves, I wanted a little bit of survivability so it doesn't just fall over when someone sneezes on them. But we have HP, 5-star once again, but double speed, double accuracy there. On the shield, just a filler piece from Feral set, but double speed, some accuracy is kind of the main thing there. Double speed accuracy with the supersonic helmet, and then triple speed with no accuracy because my pinpoint gear is terrible. But this is a fast weapon, so I put it on him. In terms of the blessing, I opted for temporal change. That's to kind of index into these or double down on the supersonic aspect, the cut in style build that I have on him. So that's what I opted for with the blessing. Of course, the soul I managed to get from the was it a Titan event or was it one of those heroes paths? I believe it was. And then I do have a relic on him, just a level 9 orb of transfixion, so a small chance that he can steal a random buff whenever he attacks them, and he's going to do a lot of attacking, of course, because of the lockout, potential extra turn, counterattacks, or an instant activation of the A2 and stuff like that. So every once in a while he can steal a buff. Sometimes he can steal Stone Skin, which is kind of funny. And then for the masteries, of course, he is built in the support and defense tree because he is pretty much exclusively for me an arena champion. However, he can flex into some areas of PvE, as we'll discuss a little bit later. But support tree, pretty much everything that gives me accuracy, lore steal for the extra stats, coming down to Eagle Eye, of course, maximizing the accuracy we want. And then the defense tree, lots of survivability, shadow heal, resurgent. I went for Harvest Despair as well, so he can play some leeches when he places the fears and petrifications, you know, counterattack, cycler event, all that stuff. Gives him turn meter, gives him a little bit of tankiness, and tries to keep him alive. But most of the time, he kind of dies if anyone attacks him. And then all of that culminates into his total stats, which I totally forgot to mention, but 70,000 on the HP, 3K on the defense, 307 on the speed, so not the fastest Fabian out there, and then 739 on the accuracy. If I had my pick of the litter, I would kind of rebalance him to be a little bit faster, maybe like 350, 360, and then drop the accuracy maybe down to 600, 650-ish. But the way my gear is, as you saw, I don't really have a lot of pieces that are really, really high speed in these particular sets, and I do want him in both of these sets. So it's a waiting game to see if we can get better gear, but I digress. So here we are in the classic arena, which is of course where I primarily use him in all forms of arena, definitely live arena as well. He's usually my first pick for now. We'll see how that changes once I get Marius in a couple of weeks, but for now he is definitely my first pick out there just because he's really, really good ban bait. But in classic arena, we get to pick our enemies a little bit better. So I have a couple of fights here that I think he should be useful for. We're going to start off with this Wukong Rhodos team here. So I anticipate, this is my expectation basically for every single fight, that they are going to be in some stone skin shenanigans here. So we're going to react accordingly. And because the goal here is to actually win the fights, I am going to be using the best of the best champion. So this is not necessarily meant to be surrounding him with a super free to play friendly accessible team, but nonetheless it's just to showcase what he can do against some of the harder teams depending on who you might have. So for this one, we're definitely going to bring in the Siphi, we're going to bring in the Mezamel to deal with the Wukong and delete him. Then we're also going to bring in Harima to help counter the Rhodos. So let's go ahead and see this in action. Of course, like I did mention earlier, running him anti-affinity into magic affinity champions is not necessarily the best thing, but nonetheless, I'm banking on the fact that he's going to lock out the Rhodos, and/or Rhodos can't really do a whole lot with Harima on the team. Bolster, I forgot to mention, Bolster is another way to counteract his ability to get the extra turn, as you can see there. So there's buffs that cannot be removed, so there's nothing we can do about that. But in the meantime, I believe everyone is locked out. So let's go ahead, take out the Wukong. Don't have to worry about that guy anymore. Pythion's locked out. We can try and do a little bit of damage to Rhodos there. Unfortunately, the Bolster kind of saved his life, and he killed Mezamel, but he's locked out, so we're all good. And yeah, basically, the fight's kind of over at this point. Can't do anything with the petrification because UDK is, of course, going to eat it. Oh, look at that. Orbit transfixion doing some work there. We actually stole the stone skin from the UDK. Let's go ahead and try to kill the Rhodos. There we go. Let's do this. We should hopefully... no, not quite. Yeah, we can do this. Try to get the True Fear out and prevent that revive. Unfortunate there. Looks like there's a Wand of Submission there on the Pythion. Noted. Definitely noted there. Let's drop the UDK so you don't have to worry about his passive. Let's try and do some damage. There we go. Do the Rhodos. And then hopefully True Fear, as I always say, is a fake debuff. And maybe we can actually have it proc there and have him not cleanse himself. Never mind. Of course not. But anyways, this one's on lock. But yeah, just showing you, a simple setup there. We lock them out, and we can kind of take our time taking them out slowly. So we'll rinse and repeat that strategy, or somewhat, against this team as well. So we'll step it up in terms of difficulty. So this is definitely a scary team on paper. We've got a Galathir, we've got a Harima, we've got a Marius, we've got the super buffed chicken. But a similar team should be able to take them out. And the way I typically approach things, especially when there's mythicals in the fight as well, is that when I lock them out, obviously a mythical champion can just change forms. And so because of that fact, I'm going to focus my Mezimel here on the chicken because we want to take him out first. And apparently he has... I guess aspect to Siroth, maybe that might have saved his life, but we'll definitely finish him off there. So we do some damage. He's going to revive him because he did resist it, and but Harima and Marius should still be locked out, so we don't necessarily have to worry about them. We hit there. I wish I could petrify, but he's probably going to resist it because there's a high resistance on the Galathir. That's going to kill Mezimel, unfortunate. And then we can do this big AoE attack there. But yeah, once again, the premise here is that we are able to take advantage of the fact that we can buy ourselves a lot of time by locking them out, and that is very, very advantageous. So they're kind of protected here, and we have Enfeeble on, unfortunately. We still, I think, have 2 more turns before things kind of hit the fan here, but we should be okay. This is going to heal them up, unfortunately. So the main thing is that Marius does not kill my entire team there. Perfect. So in this case, let's try and kill the Harima. Get rid of her passive. It just makes it a little bit easier. We don't want to attack Marius with the A1. That is a very, very dangerous thing. I should mention that as well. When you're using Fabian, his A1 will reduce turn meter. So the last thing you want to do is attack a Marius because he will counterattack and potentially kill a lot of people on your team. So let's see if we can try and take out the Galathir here, get the revive on death. We have our cooldown back. We can lock him out. Looks like the Galathir was in protection. So those protected buffs are going to protect them from, or prevent my Fabian from getting the extra turn. Ooh, unfortunate there. Okay. And, oh, we're still under Enfeeble. Did not notice. But yeah, we have True Fear there. Now, counterattack there. He got his turn off, and now he is petrified. So fantastic. He is prevented from doing anything. Should not have done that A1 there. Whoops. All good. Apparently this is not a full crit rate Marius. That should have done a lot more damage there, but there you go. Even the super scary team can be dealt with just by locking out the more important people. Obviously Galathir there resisted everything and he was never locked out, but we locked out all 3 of the nukers and we took them out one by one. The last thing I wanted to show you guys in Classic Arena is just him into an Odin. Of course this is a one-man defense, but I wanted to highlight the concept that once again you can use him into champions like Odin who just place a debuff or one of the CC debuffs on him, but they don't manipulate his turn meter or anything like that. And Armons is typically something you don't want to go against. Again, Magic Affinity, bad matchup. But in Odin, you're totally fine. So we'll just show a good example here. We'll bring in, let's say, Encore to protect a Rhodos and go into this fight. So no matter what the Odin does, he can come in, he can stun everybody, but as soon as he gets his turn, it's removed, and then we can lock him out. So don't be afraid to use him aggressively into certain champions like Odin's and the like, Queen of Hearts and things like that, because they can CC him, but as long as they don't reduce his turn meter, he's good to go. He'll wake himself up at the start of his turn and still be able to lock them out. And for some examples of slightly more difficult fights, let's go into Tag Team Arena. This is Sunday night at the time of this recording, so we are working towards trying to get back into Gold 2, so we do have to fight some pretty difficult people to try and pull that off. And so this team is a team that I will target because I know that I can probably beat 2 out of the 3 teams. I'm not sure exactly about the 3rd team, but this type of team here is perfect for a Fabian. So I expect that there's going to be a lot of stone skin here. We see that we have a 6-star polymorph, so we've got to be careful with that. But in this case, I do have pinpoint on him, so at least if I try to petrify her or true fear her, we're kind of safe. But, you know, we have a Marius once again. We got a Necret protecting one of these 2. We have an Empress here, so lots of scary things. but we can just lock them out, and then we don't necessarily have to worry about everything or anything. And then same thing as we looked at before with the chicken, that typically I'll try to kill the mythical first, because of course if you lock them out, they change forms and they have all their abilities in the other form. All right, so we've curated a team that presumably should be able to handle at least the first two. We'll see about the third one, but yeah, we'll take Fabian into a battle once again in a good showcase matchup here. And one of the things I like to look for in Tag Team Arena is affinity, definitely. So we can see here that we're going to be positive or neutral affinity across the board. So we brought in our Siffy to protect us in case they counterattack or we get enfeebled ourselves. We're going to lock everyone out. Resisted, unfortunately, there on the Duchess, but no big deal. We come in here and we can just take out the Empress. Goodbye. Gone forever, block revive. So he can't do anything. He can't change forms. And then Marius, of course, doesn't have access to his abilities there. Duchess took her turn, so we might as well switch over on the Gizmac there. We get a tank that one hit, but we have decreased defense, do a little bit of damage, ignore some shield. Took out the Duchess. Then we can go here with the Pain Link, so that now Marius will be murdering himself if he decides to attack us. So we're just going to let the Stone Skin sit there on the Fabian. Ooh, ally attack. Oh, nope, not enough damage. Unfortunate. Somebody would take himself out. But yeah, we can do this. That's probably going to take him out, and there we go. Fight's over. So yeah, neutralize, just like before, we can neutralize an entire team, assuming you have enough accuracy, of course, and make fights a lot easier. Even the scariest of teams can be dealt with a Fabian on your squad. So one last fight here as an added bonus. I'll show you how I typically counter or go against Lord Fabians, but we're also going to try and use him on fight 3 here into a Torment, which again will showcase the fact that we're not necessarily afraid of being frozen, because we will just cleanse ourselves at the beginning of our turn, and hopefully we can beat team 1. But I'll come back to you when we're fighting or starting to deal with fight number 2. All right, sweet victory. But here we are in the second fight here. So we're gonna let him lock us out. It looks like we got a weak hit. I think we got a weak hit on Roto, so that is one way to deal with him. Of course, weak hits are his weakness, so we're sending a couple of Magic Affinity champions. We're also using a mythical against him. Of course, a lot of you may or may not have mythicals on your account, so keep that in mind. But yeah, that's just one way that we can do it. Run Magic champions, or I typically like to run a Rotos and like or someone in an Ancora is kind of what I wanted to highlight. But I needed Ancora for a different fight, for fight number 1. But a good way to counter him is to have Ancora or some other high resist cleanser on your team, or just an Ancora, because she'll steal the CC on behalf of your nuker, so you won't be petrified, you won't be true feared. She'll take it on behalf of that person, which is super nice. So you can see, I guess that's a supersonic Fabian there, and we can go ahead and take him out with the Gizmac. But yeah, interesting there. And then for fight number 3, where we are now on offense here, let's take a look. I think, well, intercept should protect us from the initial freeze regardless, but no matter what, doesn't really matter. Okay, it didn't even proc. But yeah, we boost in, we lock them out, then we don't have to deal with that. Mikage is not apparently tuned to change forms, so we can take out, oof, okay, that's a weak UDK. Take out the UDK and the Wukong together. Love myself some Mezamel. One of my favorite champions, if people haven't noticed. But yeah, so just simplifying or showcasing once again that there are certain champions you don't necessarily have to be afraid of. We got Frozen there, but that's not a big deal. Like I said, whenever he gets his turn naturally, he's going to come back around. I mean, Torn's going to die here, but oh, that was his first life. My bad. But it doesn't really matter. He's going to come back to his turn and remove the freeze, so we don't really have to worry about that. So don't be afraid of using your Fabian into some of those more hard CC style of champions with passives and or active abilities, because it won't matter. He can still cleanse himself at the beginning of his turn. But of course, be wary of Sheep. Sheep is definitely the one thing that he cannot purge when he starts his turn. Hopping over to the game mode tab, let's talk about some of the other areas where Lord Entertainer Fabian can come in handy. The first being, I mean, dungeons. If you're still kind of in the progression phase, of course, locking out waves can be a way to deal with that. I think as you start to get more into the late game, into the end game, you're not going to need hard CC champions like that to clear the waves. You're going to have access to Seer compositions or Poison Explosion compositions, or some other form of really quickly dealing with the waves and then getting onto the boss. But nonetheless, if you're in the more progression phase, having a pure lockout champion, because he will definitely lock down waves with the True Fears and the lockout itself, he could definitely work there. Faction Wars, obviously, he's going to come in handy, hard mode or normal mode alike. I've definitely been using him to get a lot of my clears done in hard mode. So he's just great. Lock out the waves. True Fear, same thing. Hard CC in wave content. Arena, we showcased him there. He's definitely not a clan boss champion. He's definitely not going to help you out in any of the 3 clan bosses. Doom Tower wave clearing. If you're struggling to get through the waves, Lord Entertainer Fabian can definitely do some work. Of course, again, he's going to struggle if there's a bunch of magic champions, or he might struggle, I should say, if there's a bunch of magic champions in the waves. But in most cases, he's still going to lock them out anyways, or he's just going to get an extra turn because they're not going to have any buffs, and he can go then target someone who is neutral or positive affinity and put True Fear on everyone else who is magic affinity. So he can definitely still work for clearing bad affinity matchups in Doom Tower waves if you want to progress all the way through the floors, normal and or hard mode. And then likewise, Cursed City, he can do some work there wherever he's applicable. I definitely use him every single time. He's come in handy in a lot of the Awakened stages because he is 5-star, which is very powerful for qualifying for stages. So, of course, Cursed City, Doom Tower, kind of the same logic. And then Siege, of course, very powerful in Siege. He does have a speed in all battles aura, which does work in Siege. Siege battles, or auras with speed in arena battles do not work in Siege. So he is a great aura lead for any area in the game because it's all battles. So there you have it. That concludes the free-to-play champion showcase for Lord Entertainer Fabian. I definitely use him a lot on my account, and I was super happy when he came out. We saw the kit, and we just knew that he was going to be very, very powerful and very, very useful in a lot of different areas, specifically in PvP, but in some instances PvE as well. Let me know in the comment section down below how you have built your Lord Entertainer Fabian, assuming you have him, and that's why you're watching this video, to see good ways to take advantage of his kit. Like I said, I expect that a lot of people are in 4-piece Stone Skin, 4-piece Pinpoint if you're more in the end game, or maybe I've seen a lot of people do 4-piece Stone Skin and 4-piece Supersonic as well. As always with these free-to-play champion showcases, they are selected by you guys, my lovely viewers, so stay tuned on my community tab page after this video goes live to see, or to vote in the next poll for which champion we're going to be featuring in the showcase next. As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help out the channel, and feel free to subscribe down below as well if you are enjoying the content overall on this channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching and have a good one.